This video is a guide to Mesa. If you paid attention to the thumbnail, there's a good chance you're ready to tell me she has a true exalted weapon, her Regulators, and that Peacemaker is not a pseudo exalted ability. And you'd be absolutely correct. That thumbnail is on about her first ability, and I assure you, I can justify why I'm calling it the last pseudo exalted. Norris doesn't count. How about we get into the weeds of what Mesa does and how to use her best. I'm TheKengineer, let's solve a practical problem. If you like collaborations, Dungeons & Dragons, and fully custom adventures on a live stream, make sure to catch the news at the end of the video. Mesa's passive is some forgettable stat boost. She has a little bit more health with no melee equipped, a little bit more fire rate on dual-wielded secondaries, and a little bit more reload speed on single-handed secondaries. These will rarely be relevant to you. Her first ability, Ballistic Battery, charges up while active with every tick of damage you do with ranged attacks or their status effects. At any point up to full charge, you can discharge the ability to make your next non-melee attack deal increased damage. I'll get into the weirdness of this in a moment. Her second ability, Shooting Gallery, gives you and a random ally anywhere on the map a small damage buff. While active, a few nearby enemies will become stun-locked, either trying to unjam their gun or outright unable to act. The effect bounces between your allies if you have more than one other player in your squad. Her third ability, Shatter Shield, provides up to 95% damage reduction and reflection from ranged attacks, but with zero defense against melee, radial, and environmental damage. Lastly, her fourth ability, Peacemaker, is a loosely targeted, aimbot dual pistol exalted with the fire rate and stopping power of a souped up machine gun. At its most basic pass then, this is a kit about gunning down your opponents in droves, preparing super shots as needed, and otherwise being encouraged to avoid melee opponents, usually by shooting them first. But you see, Warframe really isn't that simple. You can't just look at the information presented and understand it. Let's knock out the easy bits. Shatter Shield is indeed up to 95% incoming range damage reduction. With a starting point of 80%, it only takes 119% strength to max out this ability. If an enemy is within range when you're shot, the shot bounces back and hurts them for full damage within a fixed angle of reflection. While this doesn't protect you from explosion damage, the ability to reflect projectiles like bombard rockets away from you means the explosion will often happen far enough away from you as to be harmless. That said, explosions that trigger near you are still a threat. Curiously enough, Arson Xmas Fire Blasts do not count as an explosion or environmental, so Shatter Shield does resist them. This, however, doesn't apply to Shock and Blitz Xmas attacks. As with most forms of enemy self-damage, their damage is vastly outscaled by their hit points at all reasonable levels. If you're at a point where you can still tank their attacks, they're not at a point to be threatened by the reflection. With its augment, Staggering Shield, Shatter Shield gains the ability to stagger enemies when struck by reflected shots. This makes it similar to Mesmer Shield on Revenant, but with key differences. The stagger effect is not as strong as Mesmer Shield's stun, has a limited range, and will affect the target being reflected at rather than necessarily the one doing the shooting. This can at the least give you more protection against close melee opponents by staggering them before they can hit you. Broadly, Shatter Shield does what it offers. You deflect ranged and suffer everything else. Shooting Gallery is also relatively simple. For the whole duration, it'll buff you, and for the whole duration, it'll buff one ally at a time. The more people are in squad, the less time it spends buffing each ally as the buff bounces between them. You still get 100% uptime on it. The defensive aspect of the buff is by far the most notable, disabling multiple nearby enemies indefinitely. The effect isn't perfectly continuous, however, so some shots can be fired from enemies who otherwise should be affected. Offensively, it's trash. It provides a base 25% damage buff which, if you compared it to Raw, it looks nice. Sure, it has a reduced starting point compared even to Subsumed Raw, but that's not the issue. Shooting Gallery provides a merely additive damage bonus. This makes the 25% only slightly stronger than an unranked Hornet Strike, or slightly weaker than the first rank up of Serration. To be as effective as Hornet Strike fully ranked, you would need to power this ability with 880% strength. At that point, you'd still be dealing less than double damage if used with a gun modded with Hornet Strike, less than 50% extra damage if the gun is instead modded with an Acolyte Arcane. Seeing as 880% strength is a ridiculous value, let alone for such a low bonus, this is just a bad damage buff. Shooting Gallery does offer an augment to enhance its defensive nature. Muzzle Flash will emit a radial blind effect for every 6 kills and assists you score while Shooting Gallery is active. This doesn't affect Xmas units, but normal enemies will be prevented from seeing and attacking you for a short period, giving you more breathing room in more intensive encounters. For missions where you can comfortably, or at least sufficiently tank via hit points and Shatter Shield, Muzzle Flash is a low value augment. Spending the mod slot to disable a few non-threatening enemies isn't smart. However, if you're going into longer or high level missions where hit point tanking may be insufficient, having that extra layer of control can reduce the demand on your survivability. So between a very defensive tanking ability with some damage reflection, or a defensive control ability with token damage enhancement, Mesa's 2 and 3 are pretty simple. But then we come to Mesa's first ability, Ballistic Battery. This is Mesa's somewhat pseudo-exalted ability, and the parallels are there to justify that claim. The old pseudo-exalteds like Landslide, Whipclaw and Shattered Lash were damage abilities that used a weapon's modding to elevate them well beyond the normal strength scaling that abilities get. The innate stats of the weapon had a lower or no effect, and the mods that would benefit the ability were only a selection of the mods available to the weapon as a whole. For Ballistic Battery, pretty much all of that is true. When activated, Ballistic Battery starts accumulating charge from your ranged attacks. This can be from a thrown glaive, gunblade shot, status ticks from a pistol / proc, direct or AoE damage from a rocket launcher, or Mesa's own regulators. Each hit provides up to 4% charge, achieved to just 200 damage dealt after enemy resistances and vulnerabilities. With 25 sufficiently strong damage ticks, or more hits if dealing below 200 damage, Ballistic Battery reaches full charge. At any point up to max charge, the ability can be deactivated, providing a buff to your next non-melee weapon attack. This buff is up to 5,000 flat damage, multiplied by your strength, added to your weapon's own damage with a matching damage type composition. Unlike the old pseudo-exalted, you do need to hit with the weapon to actually apply this ability's damage, and it applies as strictly weapon damage, not ability damage. This is why it's not really a pseudo-exalted, but the major parallels are still there. The damage buff scales from some mods and features on the weapon. It is boosted by element mods, crits, faction mods, weak point mods, headshot benefits, extra multipliers like longbow sharp shot or devouring attrition, and multiplicative applications of the gundition overload mods. Other things have no effect though. Pure damage mods like Serration, and the galvanized damage mods when additive to Serration, will not buff the damage bonus from Ballistic Battery. Likewise, multi-shot has no effect, as only one shot will get the boost regardless. Fire rate has no effect, for the same reason. Punch through, weirdly, also doesn't work, with only the first target hit taking the bonus damage. However, wide body projectiles and AoE weapons, capable of innately hitting multiple enemies without the punch through mechanic, will apply the bonus to all targets hit. In a very pseudo-exalted fashion, this means a dedicated modding can give you exceptional results, allowing you to go as far as to surpass what the damage pop-ups can even register. Weapons that utilize the damage buff for the best are multi-hitting weapons from a single shot. This includes the Kuva Brammer and other launchers, the Pseudo Altfire, and the Latron Incarnon. The base damage of the weapon used this way is unimportant compared to the application of it. And then we bring in the augment. Ballistic Bullseye will add a flat critical chance bonus when Ballistic Battery is discharged. Very curiously, this flat critical bonus, operating much like Arcane Avenger, is applied to the entire trigger pull when using a multi-shot weapon. This is in spite of the fact that only one shot in the multi-shot will get the damage bonus. Still, in optimized scenarios for maximizing the damage from Ballistic Battery, the multi-shot remains a relatively wasted spot. As Ballistic Bullseye is a flat critical chance, weapons with lower critical chance but higher critical damage can be used to even greater effect. This is again where the pseudo can shine. The Prime variant has only a 10% critical chance on its Altfire Glaive, just 2% on the normal pseudo. While their critical damage stats are also very low, those can be modded up while skipping critical chance modding, and let the bouncing, homing, exploding glaive do the rest of the work. Almost every example of a single shot with multiple hit stages will have the same leap in damage output. Whether that's using the lens for a burst of damage even on its 10 damage bubble formation before exploding, or using the Epitaph Quickshot to turn the normally priming mode into a damage dealer. They all work to varying degrees. but the Pseudo and Kuvabrammer remain my top picks for this. The Pseudo's ease of use and ability to self-charge rapidly with its innate multi-shot makes it a reliable option. The Kuvabrammer, on the other hand, is able to utilize Longbow Sharpshot to multiply the Ballistic Battery damage by 4 in a way that almost no other weapon can. By aiming up, just hitting the ceiling, the explosion rains down on a group of enemies from above and will almost certainly hit one or more in the head. A single headshot this way is sufficient for Longbow Sharpshot to stay active, a consistent quadrupling of the effect. When using the Brammer this way, I recommend using a primer like the Epitaph to charge up the ability cheaply while also weakening enemies. Played out this way, you can have a Mesa approach that doesn't use her 4th ability at all. You can keep it as a backup plan if you want, or otherwise call down the wrath of the Mesa mains by subsuming out Peacemaker. Ballistic Battery can benefit from most damage buffed subsumes, such as Nourish, Eclipse, Raw, and more. I would suggest Eclipse, as you can flip it into a damage resistance ability should the mission become more dangerous than you planned for. Realistically, it's your choice, based on what you're more comfortable using. Build-wise, the core focus is Ballistic Bullseye, Strength to power it, and any buff abilities, and enough tank to let you focus on kills and your action loop. Battery up, charge it, battery down, detonate. Archon shards for casting speed and starting energy will make everything smoother and instantly ready to go in any mission. Outside of multi-hit weapon picks though, Ballistic Battery's use cases are limited. As it takes 25 hits to charge up fully, you're banking a super damage shot for high value targets after hopefully blending through the normal enemies. It's not a damage buff ability in the sense that most of the time you're getting 0 benefit. Your weapons need to be good enough without it, or you'll be spending the time and energy to cast it for near enough every foe. That's just not good enough. When it comes to some of the most hardy foes, a little thing called damage attenuation kills any power that Ballistic Battery can achieve. A super duper kill shot doesn't work when the target says nuh-uh to high damage shots. Which finally brings us to Peacemaker itself, the defining essence of Mesa that definitely does not work like it's shown in trailers. It is brilliant at cutting down hordes of enemies with ease, or focus firing a single target until they relent. It is otherwise useless on non-standard targets, such as the Aura Worm, because it literally cannot be shot at by Peacemaker. Besides its odd target selection, Peacemaker uses a targeting reticle that shrinks as you fire, forcing you over time to be more precise with your aim to shoot. Recasting the ability will reset this reticle for you. On top of the aiming, Regulators start at only a fraction of their stated fire rate, rising to maximum over a few seconds of firing, and again resetting when either recast or unfired for a couple seconds. Beyond those quirks of aiming and fire rate, the Regulators are otherwise standard pistols with a force double shot per action, innate automatic trigger, aimbot, and standard hit scan damage mechanics. As with most exalted, ability strength will boost the damage of Regulators via additive pure damage, meaning that pure damage mods and arcanes are less useful than normal. Not only that, but the arcanes Regulators have to pick from are rather restricted in general. Any that are designed with weak point or headshot mechanics in mind don't work, as Regulators mainly aim for center of mass. Any relying on status chance or highly primed enemies are usually a waste of time with Regulators' low status chance. Instead, the most useful options are either Secondary Outburst, if combined with a dedicated melee option, Secondary Fortifier for an additional defensive layer and greater effect against Overguard, or Secondary Merciless or Cascadia Flare for simple pure damage bonuses, at the cost of them still being additive to the damage bonus from Strength and other pure damage sources. These two arcanes are the lazier, low value choices. For using Outburst, you can go about it a few ways. A melee setup for achieving combo quickly can allow you to charge it up and then unleash Fury with enhanced crits. A Tonfa is a very effective way of achieving that, in higher enemy density especially. Alternatively, use initial combo mechanics. A finisher-based melee with melee crescendo will allow you to reach maximum initial combo and maintain it, such as with the Inodem. For a non-finisher approach, the Anniversary Reward Dex Nikana provides reduced 11 times max multiplier in exchange for needing only half the initial combo per tier. This can be achieved easily with just Galvanized Reflex and Corrupt Charge, allowing you to get the maximum benefit with just a couple heavy attack kills per minute. All of these approaches will greatly enhance the critical output of Regulators, especially useful against Acolytes. For Secondary Fortifier, there's no setup involved. It's a simple buff against the hardiest targets and an overguard boon on top. In all cases, the Regulator build can remain the same. I'm going for a critical focus, toxin, radiation, magnetic approach. The many elements means the strongest targets can be overwhelmed with status effects for galvanized shot purposes. The toxin will trigger Arcane continuity on Mesa to apply corrosive procs as well. The radiation and magnetic mods add extra fire rate and critical damage, always welcome on Mesa. In the Exalted slot, almost nothing works. No recoil to account for, no aim blinding, no ammo maximum or resupply. The only mod of any actual function there is suppress. Congratulations, you're now a silent gunslinger as far as enemies are concerned. Do remember, when setting up these Regulator loadouts, that their config slot matters in Duviri. If you're using the first config for your Mesa mods, you'll be equipped with the first config for your Regulator mods. Switch the physical position of your configs as needed before loading Intentions Cave. When using Mesa for Regulator focused gameplay, energy economy is the name of the game. The innate 15 energy per second draw is a huge cost for her, on top of the 25 energy initial cast of Peacemaker. For a self-maintaining approach, I have gone with this. It's utilizing Nourish, Streamline and Equilibrium for energy economy, enough to sustain Mesa with this alone in most missions. Otherwise, it's relying on a shield hit point tank through Shatter Shield, Prime Redirection and Adaptation. Staggering Shield and keeping Shooting Gallery is the added defense against close targets. If you are using external energy support, such as a Synth Deconstruct built companion, then you can get away with lower efficiency, dropping Streamline for more power strength. Likewise, if you're confident you don't need as much defense, Staggering Shield can be dropped for more casting stat power too, such as an Intensify variant. Mesa's Waltz in the Extra slot is somewhat optional, but it really does make for a smoother gameplay, especially with dodge rolls for mobility. The focus is in energy economy and balanced strength and duration stats to avoid having to constantly recast Mesa's supporting abilities. Remember that Shatter Shield is capped after 119% strength, Shooting Gallery is a paltry additive bonus, and Peacemaker's damage bonus is additive to pure damage mods. This additive consideration goes both ways. Adding more strength to it will mean more damage, but it's scaling against the pure damage already modded in through Galvanized Shot, as well as Merciless or Flare if you're using those arcanes. Every extra status effect that Galvanized Shot can scale from is the equivalent of 80% extra strength on Peacemaker. All that to say, making sacrifices for high strength isn't always the immediate win it appears to be. If you look to make adjustments from the builds I'm sharing, make sure you keep the opportunity cost in mind before jumping straight for more power. Let's face it, Mesa's already powerful. So whether you're supercharging AoE weaponry, building for 2 billion damage headshots, or relaxing with a run-of-the-mill gun show, this should give you what you need to understand and use Mesa for what she's best at. Build guides aren't the only thing I create. If you're watching this video before the end of August 2025, then you've got the opportunity to catch a unique livestream I'm hosting on August 30th. I'll be streaming a fully custom Dungeons & Dragons one-shot designed by me, Raid on Orphic Tower. This adventure sees the players as dark separatists, fighting back against the prime Warframes and their sentient allies in the era of the Old Peace. I'll be joined by some fellow creators, as well as 3 well-known faces from DE. Make sure you tune in on the day to catch that expedition as it happens live. That's all from me for now, so as always, charge shot, aim bot, and fight well, Tenno.